How do you define intelligence? The answer is something that separates the magic in the two popular manga Frieren and Witch Hat Atelier, and this can be seen in the two lead characters, Frieren and Coco. Both characters are smart and they're both good at magic, but for different reasons. And both series are based on magic, but there's one simple difference between the respective magic systems that makes these worlds and their characters surprisingly different. And the answer to this can be found in how each story approaches the meaning of magic. So in this video, I'm going to analyze the different magic systems in Frieren and Witch Hat Atelier, discuss how they support two different kinds of protagonists, and explain why these stories use two completely different approaches to language. Now, right away, you're probably wondering what language has anything to do with spells or runes. But anyone who's read Witch Hat knows that it uses runes for its spells, and each rune is completed by combining different signs and sigils. Naturally, this means that runes are a kind of language in the same way that C++ is a language. Now, when it comes to Frieren, language also plays a big part in the magic. Names of spells carry meaning. On top of that, studying spells and developing your understanding of each spell deepens your skill and power as a mage. And especially in the case of demons, not knowing what a spell means can literally be the difference between life and death. Okay, so we know language plays an important role in each story, but here's the question that I struggled with and one that I'm sure most people can't answer right away. What is the main difference between the magic in Frieren and the magic in Witch Hat? The reason this is such an interesting question is because both series use language as part of their magic systems, but Frieren uses a more conventional approach that consists of scrolls and incantations, while Witch Hat uses a system that consists of magic that's drawn rather than cast or spoken, and is hyper-focused on form and technique. I guess the better question isn't what's the difference between the two, but how does this difference define each story? The simple answer would be to say Frieren has a soft magic system and Witch Hat has a hard magic system. That was my answer at first, but there's two problems with that. First of all, both magic systems are fairly nuanced. The runes in Witch Hat have a lot of rules about how you form and combine each part. Naturally, there's a lot of detail that goes into them, but there's plenty of detail in Frieren as well. There may not be as many rules, but the story explains pretty clearly how magic works and what the rules are. Everyone has mana. You use mana to cast spells. Different societies have different kinds of spells and magic. By studying a spell, not only do you learn how to cast it, but you can learn more about the spell and learn how to use the spell better than someone who just learned it. There's a bit more going on, but that's the gist of it. So it wouldn't really be fair or even true to say Frieren has a soft magic system. And to be quite honest, even if that were true, that's only a surface level observation. The meaningful difference between the two stories is actually how they approach meaning. Basically, Frieren is concerned with the meaning of words, or what's referred to as semantics. Witch Hat also cares about meaning, but it's more concerned with the formation of words, or syntax. But real quick, before I say more on that, make sure to check out my next live stream. I stream reviews of new manga chapters every Sunday, Monday, and Thursday. Now, like I was saying, Witch Hat and Frieren have two different approaches, which can basically be broken down to form versus meaning. And to better understand what that means, let's look at the goals of a mage versus the goals of a witch. In Frieren, every mage has basically two goals, with the exception of demons, who only focus on one spell for cultural reasons. Every mage wants to learn as many spells as possible. Learning more spells can gradually raise your mana level. It gives you more tools to use in fights, and since magic in Frieren relies on the caster's imagination, it also deepens your understanding of magic as a whole. Basically, the more spells you know, the more you understand magic and the better you get at magic. The prime example of this is Cyrie. She knows every spell there is to know. Naturally, she has the biggest mana level in the story, even more than Frieren's. Again, demons are different, but they're the exception. In fact, it's that exception that gives demons one glaring weakness. In addition to learning many spells, mages also strive to understand each individual spell as much as possible. Demons focus more on the second part, developing a single spell over hundreds of years. The upside is that humans and elves rarely know these spells, so demons have the advantage of novelty. But once mages have enough time to learn the spell, demons are suddenly at an extreme disadvantage. It's how humans took one demon spell, studied it to turn it into offensive magic, and then used that knowledge to create defensive magic. Suddenly, the demon who created the original spell was outdated. The bottom line is that meaning is the defining trait of magic in Frieren. Knowing what spells are makes you a better mage, and learning more about the meaning of spells leads to greater power. But that's Frieren. Witch Hat has a much different approach to magic. Like we said before, witches cast spells using runes, and runes vary depending on which kinds of parts you use and how you arrange them. Meaning is obviously important, but it's not the end goal. Witches in Witch Hat essentially have 3 goals. First, learn the fundamentals. So, how to make a rune, learning the different signs and sigils, learning how different shapes and formations make different spells. Coco learns all of that in the first volume. And like I said, learning the different signs and sigils is important, but it's not like Frieren where you can basically study it more and more. Once you know what a symbol does, that's mostly it. The only thing left is to try drawing it in different sizes and arrangements. Which brings us to the second goal, practicing different variations of spells. Runes consist of formations, so how you arrange the shapes changes what the spell is. For example, in Witch Hat, there's flying shoes that use a wind-based rune. When balanced, the shoes let the witch fly at a balanced pace. But if you draw the same rune with longer shapes, it's like throwing a turbo on them. As opposed to Frieren, where mages want to learn lots of spells and study the same ones over and over, witches only learn so many signs and sigils, which is why the third goal is to try as many arrangements and variations as you can. So whereas mages are focused on the meaning of spells, witches are focused on the arrangement of spells. In other words, Frieren's magic is built on semantics, and Witch Hat's magic is built on syntax. One system pushes characters to study individual parts of the system as much as they can, while the other pushes them to focus on how they arrange those parts. So the next question you might be asking is, what's the difference? I mean, we already figured out that they both use language. So what difference does it make if one is about definitions and one is about grammar? While it might not seem like it, this one difference is what defines the tone and central theme of each story and makes them each unique. It's something that influences every single character in both stories, and it essentially means that these stories are playing 2 different games, even though they're both using magic. Language, in a way, is just a game. It doesn't exactly have winners and losers, but it has rules, it requires skill, and everyone has their own style. The best way I can describe it is like this. Frieren is playing chess, while Witch Hat Atelier is playing Minecraft. In chess, you really can't call yourself a professional until you've spent a ridiculous amount of time studying the game. Everyone has equal access to spells or pieces, but the winner is going to be whoever knows all the possible moves you can make, knows all the strategies and their weaknesses, and has studied all of the best chess players. So let's say, for example, you're up against a demon in Frieren. Well, if you're a new player, a demon is really scary because they have this one strategy that they studied for years and they know it inside and out. But someone like Syrie is even worse because she knows that demon strategy, she knows how to beat it, and she knows a million other strategies that the demon has never even heard of. So in Frieren, meaning is everything. And because the magic is meaning oriented, the magic system as a whole is defined by knowledge. This is why the demons can't get along with the other races and are always getting tricked by other characters. They're all good at one thing, but their lack of greater knowledge of the game is always their downfall. Not only do they not understand these characters, but they don't even see them coming. Hence why Frieren is able to win a fight by suppressing her magic. So Frieren is like a big game of chess. Meanwhile, Witch Hat is like Minecraft. Witch Hat has rules and it has objectives, but it isn't really about winners and losers. There are bad guys and there are fights, but the story doesn't really place much focus on fights. Instead, it focuses more on problem solving, which is a lot like Minecraft. In Minecraft, everyone has their own way of solving the same problems. Everyone has their own way of building a house or building a farm. And in Frieren, everyone has their own way to fix a bridge, to carry water, or to turn invisible. It's not so much about the end result. To say everyone does the same thing in Minecraft would be a bit reductive. Rather, it's about how you achieve that result. In Witch Hat, witches aren't allowed to make spells that transform or alter humans. That's why they're told never to learn medicine, because it will naturally lead to spells that change human bodies. But the bad guys don't care, and so they solve the same problems as the good guys, just not the way you're supposed to. Same end result, namely comforting people, but the difference is in how they get there. Just like how you can have very different games of Minecraft depending on how you approach them. And this is what I mean when I say that these approaches to magic systems lead to two different kinds of stories. Frieren is playing chess, so the characters are influenced by knowledge. Witch Hat Atelier is playing Minecraft, so the characters are influenced by creativity. To be clear, these aren't opposing qualities. In fact, these two things usually go together, but they are distinct and they do lead to different kinds of stories. And this is perfectly represented by the main characters of each series, because Frieren is known for her genius and Coco is known for her novelty. Again, not conflicting qualities, but they are different. So let's start with Frieren. Her motivation is very fitting for a world defined by meaning. All she wants to do is learn as many spells as she can. Remember, the whole reason they're going back to the Demon King's castle isn't because of some noble cause. It's because that's where her master supposedly learned how to talk to the dead. So her whole thing is learning about magic. Her other motivation is, of course, killing demons. Demons killed her village, so she spent years studying demons and how to fight them. Ironically, she almost has the same problem as demons. She studied them so much that she can come off as narrow-minded. It's why she's not as open to being friends with demons. But the payoff is that she understands demons and how to fight them better than anyone else. This is how she got the title of Slayer. The takeaway is that Frieren is a character defined by her desire to know things. She isn't like Brainiac in that she wants to amass every piece of knowledge in the universe. She's more like a nerd. She has her one guilty pleasure, but mostly she just likes to grab as many random pieces of lore as she can absorb. So she's defined by knowledge. Meanwhile, Coco is defined by her creativity. Coco isn't raised as a witch like everyone else, so she is naturally prone to thinking outside of the box. She's just as smart as everyone else, but she's not like other witches. Older witches live in ivory towers and just want to fix the same problems for the same people. Coco, on the other hand, wants to help the people who need it the most. And she does this by finding new ways to solve old problems. For example, one of her friends, Tarta, works in the store, but he's colorblind. So he relies on labels to tell him which potions and ingredients are which. Later in the story, he needs to find this one ingredient to help Coco while she has a fever, but he can't find anything in the hospital because nothing is labeled. So it's like, well, sorry kid, sucks to be colorblind. Except Coco thinks outside of the box. She comes up with a spell that reveals the shape of the ingredient in each vial. This way, Tarta can tell apart different ground up ingredients even though he's colorblind. Mind you, this was based on a very basic spell. Coco just altered the spell for this specific application. It wasn't that she had this massive knowledge of magic. Rather, it was her unconventional thinking that solved the problem. Unfortunately, being too unconventional is what places you outside of the rules in this story, which is kind of Coco's big pain. She knows the harms of forbidden magic and wants to help people. At the same time, she knows that the rules are a major restriction and often struggles to reconcile her desire to help people however she can with her fear of not being able to solve problems because of her limitations. So Coco is a character defined by creativity. She's defined by her capacity to approach problems in ways even the smartest witches never think of. And she's motivated by a desire to solve problems that seem like they don't have answers. She's just as smart as Frieren, just in a different way. Which brings us back to the question we asked before. How do you define intelligence? The problem is that intelligence takes on many different forms. Some people are smart because they're human dictionaries. Some people are smart because they can do the same thing everyone else can in ways that nobody ever thought of. This is the relationship between genius and ingenuity, and it's the one thing that makes Frieren and Witch Hat Atelier uniquely different. One has a system of semantics where everyone is playing chess. The other has a system of syntax where everyone is playing Minecraft. They both have a lot in common, but they each offer uniquely special stories and characters. But maybe I'm wrong. What do you think is the big difference? How would you compare these stories? Share your thoughts and see what everyone else has to say down in the comments. I'll pick my favorite and share it as comment of the week on my community tab. And make sure to become a channel member. You'll get badges and emojis for the live streams, you can pick which series I cover next, and you can even get credited in future videos. Also, check out some of my other Frieren videos, which you can find in the playlist linked right here. Until then, thank you for watching, and I hope to hear from you soon.